unveiling the secrets lurking in the swamp.
The Louisiana bayou held its breath.
Moonlight filtered through the dense canopy, dappling the swamp floor in silvery patches. Spanish moss drooped from cypress knees like spectral tears, and the air hummed with the chorus of nocturnal insects.
In this verdant labyrinth, secrets stirred beneath the surface of the murky water. One such secret was Dr. Alec Holland, a brilliant scientist on the cusp of unlocking the mysteries of plant regeneration. His lab, a rickety structure perched precariously on stilts, exuded a soft orange glow, the last echo of his tireless experiments.
Inside, Alec knelt beside a glowing array of bioluminescent orchids, their ethereal light highlighting the worry etched on his face.
Years of research had culminated in this moment, the potential
to revolutionize agriculture, heal ravaged ecosystems, and rewrite the very blueprint of life itself.
He carefully adjusted a dial, watching with anticipation as the bioluminescence intensified, bathing the lab in an alien brilliance.
Suddenly, a deafening crack split the night. The lab shuddered, a cascade of sparks erupting from a malfunctioning reactor.
Panic flooded Alec's veins as flames danced across the room, devouring his years of work. He lunged for the emergency shutdown, but it was too late. The air filled with acrid smoke and the stench of burning chemicals.
An inferno consumed the lab, swallowing Alec whole.
Hours later, the fire sputtered its last flicker, leaving behind only silence and ash.
Yet life, ever tenacious, clung to the charred remains.
Deep within the swamp, something stirred.
Tendrils of moss, imbued with an unearthly vitality, began to twitch, intertwining with smouldering embers. Slowly, painfully, a new form emerged from the ashes, Swamp Thing. He was no longer Dr. Alec Holland, the brilliant scientist.
He was a creature of the swamp, his body a gnarled tapestry of mossy bark and twisted vines.
Glowing eyes, born from bioluminescent fungi, pulsed in the darkness, reflecting the confusion and primal fear swirling within him. His senses, heightened beyond human comprehension, picked up the symphony of the swamp, the rustling of leaves,
the croaking of frogs, the whisper of wind through cypress knees.
It was a language he instinctively understood, a connection to the life force that thrummed through the very heart of the bayou.
Panic clawed at him, urging him to flee. But where? He didn't belong to the world of men anymore, nor did he fully comprehend the wild nature that now encased him. He stumbled through the swamp, drawn by an unknown force, the echoes of Alec's memories mingling with the primal urges of his new form.
As dawn painted the sky a bruised purple, Swamp Thing found himself at the edge of a clearing. A young woman, barely more than a teenager, knelt beside a still form, her sobs echoing through the stillness. It was Abby Arcane, daughter of the local trapper, who had been found lifeless earlier that morning.
Grief clouded her eyes, her heart heavy with despair. Alec, or what remained of him, felt a surge of empathy, a primal urge to alleviate her suffering. He reached out, not with hands, but with a tendril of vine, gently cradling the trapper's face.
An impossible warmth radiated from Swamp Thing, and slowly, miraculously, the man's chest rose and fell with a shallow breath. News of the miraculous revival spread like wildfire through the bayou.
Abby, initially filled with terror at the sight of the monstrous creature, slowly realized the kindness beneath the grotesque exterior. As the days turned into weeks, she became Swamp Thing's confidant, a bridge between him and the human world. Together, they ventured deeper into the heart of the swamp, exploring its hidden wonders and secrets. They discovered an Eden teeming with life, a fragile ecosystem on the brink of destruction.
Lumber companies, fueled by greed, encroached upon its borders, their monstrous machines leaving swaths of devastation in their wake.
Poachers stalked rare creatures, their eyes gleaming with avarice.
And lurking in the shadows, a corporation known as Fenrir Industries plotted a more insidious scheme. Fenrir, obsessed with profits and the potential of the swamp's unique flora and fauna, planned to strip it bare, leaving behind a desolate wasteland. Their leader, a ruthless businessman named Silas Green, saw the swamp not as a living entity, but as a resource to be exploited, its magic bottled and sold for exorbitant prices.
He viewed Swamp Thing as an obstacle, a monstrous anomaly to be eliminated.
Unbeknownst to Alec, Fenrir had been monitoring his research.
Fascinated by his bioluminescent orchids and the regenerative properties they harbored, they used Alec's own research twisted and perverted to create a monstrous bioweapon, a creature designed to hunt and destroy Swamp Thing. It was a grotesque mockery of life, a hulking mass of muscle and teeth fueled by a twisted version of Alex Bio. The delicate balance of the Bai was about to shatter.
As Fenrir Industries' monstrous creation lurked in the shadows, whispers of unease began to snake through the human settlements bordering the swamp. News of Swamp Thing's connection to the miraculous revival had spread like wildfire, igniting both awe and fear.
While some saw him as a savior, others, fueled by ignorance and prejudice, viewed him as a monstrous aberration.
Fenrir, masterfully manipulating these anxieties, painted Swamp Thing as a threat to their way of life.
They spun tales of the swamp as a cursed place, harboring dangers better left undisturbed. Silas Green, with his silver tongue and empty promises, offered the desperate communities something they were desperate for: jobs, security, and escape from the hardships that clung to them like Spanish moss. Blinded by hope and manipulated by fear, many turned against the creature who had once saved them. Abby, caught in the maelstrom of conflicting emotions, struggled to reconcile her growing affection for Swamp Thing with the mounting fear and distrust emanating from her own community. The whispers followed her like shadows, their sting sharp and painful. Yet she couldn't deny the bond forming between them, a connection
forged in shared loss and a deep-seated respect for the swamp's fragile ecosystem. Swamp Thing, however, felt the sting of betrayal keenly. Despite his monstrous form, he retained Alex's capacity for empathy and understanding.
He saw the desperation in the eyes of those swayed by Fenrir's lies, the fear that fueled their hostility. Yet the pain of their rejection cut deep, a constant reminder of his isolation and the fragile bond he held with humanity. He retreated deeper into the swamp, seeking solace in the embrace of the ancient cypress trees and the symphony of the nocturnal creatures. The swamp hummed with understanding, its life force offering a comforting presence. But the fight for its survival and his own couldn't be waged alone. Driven by a newfound resolve, Swamp Thing emerged from his solitude, not with rage, but with a deep desire to understand. He ventured into the settlements, not as a monstrous apparition, but as a silent observer. He witnessed the struggles of the people, their dependence on the land, their despair exploited by Fenrir's empty promises.
With Abby's help, he began to unravel the corporation's web of deceit.
He revealed the true cost of their progress, the devastating impact their operations had on the swamp's delicate ecosystem. He pointed to the drying marshes, the poisoned waterways, the dwindling wildlife,
all testaments to Fenrir's greed and disregard for the natural world. Slowly, doubt began to creep into the hearts of those swayed by Fenrir's lies.
The whispers changed, laced with skepticism and regret. Elders, remembering the ancient stories of the swamp's interconnectedness, saw the truth unfolding before their eyes. Mothers, concerned for their children's future, questioned the promises built on the destruction of their land.
Swamp Thing wasn't just fighting for the swamp. He was fighting for humanity's own future. He knew that their destinies were intertwined, that destroying the swamp was akin to severing the lifeblood of their communities.
He believed in their capacity for compassion, their ability to recognize the harm they were causing and choose a different path. But Fenrir wouldn't back down. Silas Green, his greed fueled by desperation, unleashed his ultimate weapon, the monstrous bioweapon designed to destroy Swamp Thing.
This abomination, a horrifying amalgamation of twisted biology and synthetic enhancements, was a chilling testament to humanity's capacity for destruction. Swamp Thing, weakened by the constant battles and burdened by the weight of betrayal, faced his greatest challenge yet.
The fight was brutal, a clash between nature's raw power and technology's cold efficiency. The swamp echoed with the sounds of their struggle, the earth trembling beneath their blows. Abby, watching from the safety of the shadows, witnessed Swamp Thing falter, his mossy body riddled with wounds. He seemed on the verge of defeat, swallowed by the darkness of the swamp. Just as all hope seemed lost, a tremor ran through the ground.
The roots of the cypress trees intertwined, their branches stretched towards the sky.
The swamp, as if awakened by an ancient call, rose as one, a living tidal wave surging towards the bioweapon. The battle shifted, the tables turning. Nature, in its collective fury, fought back against the monstrosity it had helped create. In the end, the swamp emerged victorious. The bioweapon lay broken and defeated, its twisted form a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked greed. But the victory came at a cost.
The fight had scarred the swamp, leaving behind a gaping wound in its heart.
Silence descended upon the ravaged earth, broken only by the mournful croaking of frogs and the sighing of the wind through the cypress knees. The bioweapon lay vanquished, its monstrous form a grotesque monument to greed and hubris. Swamp Thing, his mossy body riddled with wounds, stood amidst the aftermath, exhaustion clinging to him like the humid air.
Turning to Abby, his glowing eyes mirrored the sorrow and uncertainty that gnawed at him.
"It is done," he rumbled, his voice like rustling leaves. But at what cost? He gestured towards the gaping wound in the swamp's heart, where the battle had unleashed its destructive fury.
The once vibrant foliage was scorched and blackened, the air thick with the stench of smoke and decay. Abby reached out, her hand trembling as she gently touched his rough bark.
"You won, Swamp Thing," she said, her voice thick with emotion.
"You protected the swamp, protected us."
He looked at her, the remnants of Alec Holland flickering in his luminous eyes. He saw fear, but also admiration and defiance. In that moment, he knew his fight wasn't just for the swamp, but for the human spirit, its capacity for compassion and change. The victory, however, did not bring immediate redemption. The whispers continued, tinged with awe and fear in equal measure. The corporation, though subdued, still lurked in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Yet, a shift had occurred. The seeds of doubt sown by Swamp Thing had begun to sprout. Slowly, cautiously, the communities bordering the swamp began to question the promises offered by Fenrir.
Elders, guided by ancient wisdom, recognized the interconnectedness of all living things.
Mothers, worried about the future of their children, saw the damage inflicted on their land and felt a pang of remorse. Abby, fueled by her connection to Swamp Thing and her love for the swamp, became a beacon of change. She organized educational workshops, highlighting the delicate balance
of the ecosystem and the vital role it played in their survival. She shared stories passed down through generations, reminding them of the ancient pact between humans and the swamp.
The whispers transformed, carrying echoes of understanding and regret. People started noticing the polluted streams, the dwindling wildlife, the diminishing resources.
They saw the connection between their actions and the suffering of the swamp.
Swamp Thing, watching from the shadows, felt a flicker of hope. He began to emerge from his isolation, not as a monstrous figure, but as a guardian, a silent teacher. He guided hunters towards sustainable practices, showed farmers ways to regenerate their land, and helped communities restore damaged areas.
His actions spoke louder than words, breaking down the walls of fear and prejudice.
He became a symbol, not of fear, but of responsibility, reminding everyone that their actions had consequences, that the fate of the swamp was intricately linked to their own.
The change wasn't easy.
There were setbacks, resistance from those blinded by greed and ignorance.
But with each passing season, the tide began to turn. Fenrir's grip on the communities loosened, their promises ringing hollow in the face of environmental degradation.
Years later, the swamp wasn't the same. The battle scars remained, a constant reminder of the past.
Yet, new life thrived beneath the canopy.
Trees sprung from scorched earth, birdsong filled the air, and the water flowed freely once more.
Abby, now an old woman with silver hair, stood beside Swamp Thing. Her eyes, though aged, held the same fire that sparked their connection years ago. She looked at the vibrant ecosystem surrounding them, a testament to the collective effort.
"You did it, Swamp Thing," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "You showed them the way, reminded them of what they had forgotten."
Swamp Thing, no longer just a creature of moss and bark, but a symbol of hope and change, simply nodded.
In his luminous eyes, Abby saw the faintest flicker of Alec Holland.
A scientist who sought to heal, a man who fought for what he believed in.
Their journey wasn't over. There were new threats, new challenges to overcome.
But Swamp Thing, no longer alone, stood strong, a guardian of the swamp, and a reminder to humanity. The fight for nature is ultimately a fight for ourselves.
In the depths of the swamp, hope persisted, like a resilient seed taking root. And as long as there was hope, the future remained open, waiting to be rewritten.